those one-shot prompts just often didn't work as well as we'd hoped. And that's one of the things I love about prompt tags has really been a way to say, okay, here's all the information, but now I'm going to highlight these instructions to you, ChatGPT, and you have to make sure you're paying attention to these. And prompt tags allowed us to do that. Welcome to the 91 Day Success Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Mast, and today I'm thrilled to have with me Peter Hatherley. Peter and I have gotten to know each other recently through a Facebook group that I run and a couple that he runs as well. Peter and I are both what I would call AI nuts. We both love it. And the neat thing is that we have some different ways we approach things. So Peter and I have actually been able to learn, and I shouldn't say Peter, I've been able to learn a lot from Peter. Let me put it that way. I don't know if Peter's learned anything from me, but I've learned a lot
Oh,
from
yeah.
Peter. And I'm really excited to have him here on the podcast today to talk about some of the things that he's doing. And this is going to be an AI focused podcast. So if you run a business and you're trying to figure out how do I leverage AI, whether that's to improve your career if you work for one or if you own one, how do you make that business better? This is going to be a great episode. So with that, Peter, tell us a little bit about yourself. You and I obviously have gotten to know each other over the last year, but tell the audience a little bit about yourself and who you serve. I know you've got a lot of different things that you do in AI, and I'd love to hear about those and how our audience might be interested.
Yeah. I've been in AI since 2022, and I started with the phrase where I started doing custom templates.
Mm-hmm.
And those custom templates was actually where I found out about prompt tags, strangely enough. And it was basically because I was creating more creative sort of style templates. I started right from the beginning. First template I ever created was called Agency Writer. And because I had an agency background and knew a lot about what clients were looking for, and I did it from a persona point of view, right from the beginning. The first one was Agency Writer, which really was just very creative content. And that was the difference. Right from the start, it was more creative, it was more engaging, more compelling in those sort of ways. And it steamrolled from there. I started selling it on Phrase as a link. People could buy the links, and it just took off like wildfire. And this was a good 6 months before ChatGPT hit the market. So I was using OpenAI. I was using 3.5. That was before Da Vinci. It was the version before Da Vinci. And it was pretty good. It was very creative, actually. In a way, it was too creative because that was what it was like back then. But it was really good. If you really wanted to make creative content, it really stood out. It just steamrolled from there. I put out another one. The next one I put out was called AI Professional, and that was really a marketing persona, like a marketing expert persona. And that went really well. The next one was from my background as well, because I ended up doing a lot of SEO, and great friend of Bill Slawski's, if you probably have heard of Bill, and we compared notes on this particular topic before he unfortunately passed away. But I'd actually created an image, sort of an algorithm. I'd created an algorithm back around 2015, and Bill was actually involved. It was on G Plus that we released it. And what it did was it used to create these, stumbled on a really interesting letter pattern. And really it was like LLMs before they existed. And what it would do is create these huge word banks. It was hard work because even though they created this incredible connections, and there were connections that we were able to even influence the knowledge base on Google. And this is what excited us so much, because I was doing it manually at one point when Hummingbird actually took off. And it was around about 3 months later, because they never tell you that they've done these things, especially back then they didn't. And all of the sites that I was manually putting it on went straight up to number one. And it just blew me away. I couldn't believe the impact. And so anyway, I created an algorithm which created these word banks, and actually ended up working for quite a few American companies because G Plus gave me the door to be able to sell word banks. But it was hard work. It was like you had all these words, and they're great words, and if you put them in, they were like semantic entities to a degree. But it went just a little bit further. Google's got all this information but they're not necessarily linked up. And that's the difference. And in a way, that's where it's led me to doing the prompt tags, because I did a free ebook, promoted on Phrase, and it was called Speak to the Machine. And so I found initially the big thing was teaching people how to address the machine or how to speak with the AI. And so I isolated that fairly early on. But now we're in a situation where prompt tags are they're like shorthand to a degree.
Hmm.
And we can speak more precisely and more concisely than what we would in the early stages. But I'm finding actually with the custom GPTs that you can actually speak in plain English. Very good results. I think the thing that happened with prompt engineering, it took off. It was chat. We thought it was chat, but people started creating very complex prompts, and what happened there. But what I've found since I've done the custom GPTs, because I found them extremely good, it's more about conversation. So what I'm doing in a lot of cases when I'm having a conversation with the GPT, it's more conversational, and then you can tweak it. So I'm using a lot of prompt tags just in general conversation. I'm just saying, make it more concise, or some cases I'll just ask it to extend the output by a certain amount of paragraphs, and it'll do it all for you. So it's more generative, is the word that I have been using for it. That we're more involved. Instead of making one huge prompt, we're better off just doing it by bit and honing it the way that we want it. And after all, the more we get involved, the more we feel it's like us that wrote it. That's how I feel.
Absolutely. I think you hit on something really important there, Peter. I think when we got started with prompting and prompt engineering, so to speak, we started figuring out how can we write these incredibly complex prompts that it was a one-shot prompt that's going to do everything we want. And between the models not being as advanced back then and the fact that candidly there was so much going on, those one-shot prompts just often didn't work as well as we'd hoped. And that's one of the things I love about your prompt tags. And I want to go there in just a minute is that what you've taught me about prompt tags has really been a way to say, okay, here's all the information, but now I'm going to highlight these instructions to you, ChatGPT, and you have to make sure you're paying attention to these. And prompt tags allowed us to do that. I'd love to have you explain for a moment here. I've run with that since you've taught me about prompt tags, but I'd love to have you explain to the group what are prompt tags and how do we use them in our prompts? What does that mean? Let's talk to the layperson here. What is a prompt tag and how can they use them to make the responses better, Peter?
Yeah, that's a great question. And basically, they're delimited. And so that's a term that a lot of people don't know. But delimiters are sort of separators, they separate things off. And ChatGPT uses quotation marks. Three
Hmm.
quotation marks are the general method they use. So, in a way, it's by separating them off, it's very short, very concise. The first one that I really had some incredible success with was use Hemingway's rules.
Yes.
And the thing about that, which was really intriguing, was it was an aha moment for me because I realized that I could tap into the knowledge that the LLM already had and we could make it more concise. So it basically didn't have to be spelt out. Don't don't in the act. Speak in the active voice. Don't use adjectives. All the things that Hemingway, but they understood it as a set of rules, and you didn't have to go into incredible detail. It was like listening to the AI, working out what they really understood, and that was the process of building prompt tags. Was that the more that I listened to how it responded, the better I was able to distill it down to something like Hemingway's rules, and it was doing all these. If you ask ChatGPT what Hemingway's rules are, they'll give you about 10 or 12 different ones,
Hmm.
but we don't have to write those all out. What we're talking about is making things concise, tapping into its knowledge base, and understanding that we can do that. And if we want to write a style, or obviously one of the ones I'm using is archetypes. So you can
Hmm.
put in an archetype and then it understands what you're saying. But if you put the delimiters around it, it just takes it more seriously. If you're speaking in just plain English, sometimes, say if you just put use Hemingway's rules, Hemingway will leak into the content. So it'll start talking about Hemingway, which we don't want. We want it just to use the rules. And
Exactly.
yeah, and in some cases, I've in the early stages, and I still do it to a degree, is I put use Hemingway's rules, but don't mention Hemingway. So that just makes it more precise. And it's just context, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we know how that works. So the delimiters, either the triple quotations, I use triple hash, it doesn't seem to make too much difference. And then we have square brackets around the command. So be persuasive or speak with authority, or one of the ones, and I use speak like or a lot, speak like a rapper. It was the first one I tried
I love it.
because, and it works. Speak like an expert. That's one of the tags I'm going to be promoting soon. And because speak like an expert, you don't have to tell it. If you're writing about SEO, you just put in search engine optimization as a topic. Then you say speak like an expert. Then you're going to get great content. And that's the type of place where I tend to use them. And you can use multiple ones also. But there are a few tags which will give you different results. And if you use them at the same time, it'll just confuse it. So create listicles or create a list, and then you ask it to do something that's completely contrary, output an article. So it takes just a little bit of intuition to know that you can't use some of them together. But a lot of people have their sets, and Tim Parker is a good example. He uses a set that he uses all the time. There's about three tags in it and gets great results. And so you basically, and one of the things I'm doing at the moment, I'm creating a tool because my AI tools have prompt tags built in. So it's a drop down. So basically, you can use the drop down and you don't have to type it all the time. But I've decided to create a little utility tool where people who haven't got my AI can actually use prompt tags and just
Mm,
copy them and put them into whatever tool they're using. And so I'm actually in the process of doing that right now. And there's a whole heap of them. And the good thing is that there's a drop down and it's got a search in the drop down. So it's not just a drop down. You've got to keep on, like countries, which we all
sure.
hate. You've got to go all the way through it. But in this particular case, it's very intuitively built where you can just type in, if you type in HEM, you're going to get Hemingway straight away.
Excellent.
It's like that.
Do you find, Peter, that do these rules? I know a lot of this came out of some of the documentation for ChatGPT. Do you find these also work in Google's new Gemini, Claude, and things like that? Do they work equally as well as far as you can
Yeah,
tell?
it appears to. I've only recently got into Claude. It took a long time to come out to New Zealand, and I've got three now, and I'm finding it really quite intriguing, actually. And it definitely works with Claude. Gemini, I've done a little bit with it, and it seems to work there. The thing with Gemini is it outputs quite different type of content
It
than, say,
does.
yeah, Claude and OpenAI. And saying that, if you're doing a white paper or something, it can do incredible levels of research, and it gets involved in the process. Probably a little too much for my liking,
Okay.
but still, it's impressive for where it is. I'm impressed with it, but because I'm so busy with these other platforms, I don't tend to use it quite as much as I haven't had a good chance to really. So I can't really say too much about that. But Claude and OpenAI, absolutely, and it works in subsidiary tools like ZimWriter and my authored intelligence tools, obviously, because that's where it started. And Phrase is another one that they work particularly well with. I haven't really found a place where they don't work, to be honest.
Very interesting. Now, I have often compared, I shouldn't say often, because I literally learned this from you a couple of weeks ago, so I shouldn't say often, but when I am asked, I often say to me, to the uninformed, sometimes I know prompt tags and delimiters, it intimidates people that haven't done any programming, and they're like, I don't want to go there. But I try to explain to them, imagine you could add yellow highlighting to part of your prompt by just putting 3 pound signs at the beginning and then incorporating that in square brackets. And they're like, I could do that. In your mind, is that a good way to explain that to a user that's not familiar with the programming, or am I missing something there?
I think it's a very good way of describing it. And because, yeah, I get it that people don't like using syntax, but those of us who've done HTML, it seems a lot less, and CSS and all those sort of things. If you're programmed, it seems very simple. So that's why I built the drop down, is that it stopped people having to type those things around it. It just did it automatically. So you look down to say less adjectives. So if you want less adjectives or you want less adverbs, you can just click it and it will just put the tagging around it. So that sort of solved the problem to a degree. When people had to type it in themselves originally, there was that issue. And I think the way of automating it, I think we've got to automate it to make it easier for people to use.
There's no doubt when it comes to AI, I'm sure you found this as well. It seems to me the biggest misconception people have is that it should be easier than it is. It should be super easy. They're looking for that. What prompt can I use to write me the next best-selling novel? And that's not one prompt, folks. That's probably not 100 prompts. You know, that's a lot of work. And I know I see
Mm,
that in my AI group. I know you run some groups as well. And I'm sure you've seen that where people seem to think because it's AI, all we need is this silver bullet prompt. And if we come up with that, we're going to be able to do whatever it is we want. And I think that's a huge misnomer that's out there and a huge just missed expectation. I've told people, and just this morning, I was telling people, AI to me is an amplifier. In other words, it amplifies what's already there. If you have knowledge, it's going to amplify that. But if you asked me to use AI to become an expert at surgical procedures, which I know nothing about, have no desire to learn anything about, it's still going to be zero times whatever. Let's say it's 100 or 1,000 that AI is. Zero times that 1,000 is still zero. But if
yeah.
you happen to be a world-class surgeon and now you want to use AI to help explain those procedures, it's going to take your knowledge that's at 90 or 95 on a scale of 100 and multiply that. Now that's a
Mm,
massive value. But to me, without that, it really doesn't do much. I know that's something a lot of people struggle with because they assume that if I use AI, I can be an expert at anything. How do
yeah.
you help people understand the best ways that they can use AIs in their lives and their businesses and things like that, Peter? I know you've also got a number of specific tools. I mentioned books, and I know you've got a tool to help people write books and things like that. But
Yes.
how do you help them integrate AI into their lives to understand where they should start doing that and how AI can have some of the most impact for them? Any thoughts or guidance or suggestions for our users?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And it's a good example that I'm doing at the moment. I'm writing a book that there's nothing else out there on the subject. And you've got to brief the AI, or in my case, I created custom custom made custom GPTs, which which they really can solve a lot of that problem for you. So they're using prompt tags, and I built prompt tags into all of my AI tools, and so they're very precise, and very specific, and I've been doing that for some length of time. Now, when I'm doing my book, I've got to brief it more.
Okay.
If you brief it and you say, "I want you to write about this," or just write in your own description of what you want it to say, it will do it. And this subject is a completely new process. It's to do with, and there's a book I'm writing on subliminal triggers. Yes, it's got a lot of information, but I want to present that information in a different way. And the way I wanted to present it is that we can ourselves use subliminal triggers. And we get them from everywhere. We get them on TV, we get them in all sorts of places. But if you just leave the machine or leave the AI to just write it, it will write based on all of the information that's gathered and what it thinks about the subject. So what I'm finding is if you brief it better, say the surgeon briefs it better, gives his opinion about certain things and makes it more, then you get the real unique flavor. And that was the whole emphasis in calling my product Authored Intelligence, that we're involved, that it's intergenerative, and that we're part of the process. What a lot of people want to do is just, as you say, one click and you're going to one click pony. It's not the way it works. It's basically, how can I work with the AI to get the output that I want? And that's why I called it Authored Intelligence, because you're part of the authoring process. And that's a very vital part of actually understanding how AI works. Otherwise, you're just going to get generic content. If you've got bulk outputters that are going to put out the same stuff, all it's doing is using the information from the top 10 of SERPs or whatever. It's really just word spinning, like article spinning that we all despise. What I'm interested in is having unique, I always have been, unique content that really engages people and think this is different. This is something that doesn't sound like everybody else. And that's,
Yes.
I've created
Yeah.
a concept called the big idea. And prompt tags is a big idea. It's exactly what the concept is. And when you've got one like that, then people can gather around it, and that's a unique mechanism, and it works really well. The big idea will actually create that. Like, for instance, I've got a drainage contractor that I do work for here in Christchurch, and it came up with a big idea AquaGuard, and no one else was using it. It's those sort of things, those creative things, that is the things I'm looking for in my products and for my subscribers. And opening it up with the prompt tags, I've felt really, it's been a really great experience to me, because I've held on to it and my subscribers have benefited by it. But I think it's got it's a far wider impact, and the whole community should know about it and get that sort of advantage that we've been experiencing for over 15 months.
I love that. I know there's a
Mm.
lot of things you can use prompt tags for, and I also know you've got a book coming out, so I don't want to ask you to give up too many secrets, so to speak. But Peter, could you share with our audience a little bit about some examples of prompt tags that can be used? I know one of my favorite is just to talk about tone and style, and to be able to define the tone and style that I want the AI model to take on as it responds to me. But could you share some others without giving away too many secrets, but maybe whet our appetite a little bit for your book that's
Yeah, yeah, that's a really interesting one, because one of the ones that I stumbled on, which is related to what you're saying about those styles, is the theme concept. And theme, I gave an example recently in one of my posts about Alice in Wonderland. You could put in web design and then put theme Alice in Wonderland, and it'll do the whole thing based on that theme. Now, that's an extreme example, but you can make any theme a style, archetype, speak like, and all. And the interesting thing I found with speak like, if you put right, it's going to give a slightly different output than if you say speak like is more conversational. And I think that involving conversational tags means that you're going to be more human as far as
Mm.
Google's concerned. I'll just get the list in front of me here, because I can look at it so I can see the tags, and because there's so many of them, I've got about 350.
Wow, that's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, set role is one. And then the other ones I've been using is, if you want to include headers, you just put output header, output one sentence. In my all-in-one editor, and that's the all-in-one editor is a great tool, because the one big disadvantage with GPTs is you can't edit them. And we need to edit them, we need to proof them. And sometimes you don't have to do a lot. And so in the editor, what I do is I take a sentence that's been output by either my GPTs or my own web app tools, and then I say output one sentence. So it'll just rewrite that one sentence. So you can rewrite them sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph. Another one, add a cliffhanger. And it's a very
Mm.
powerful effect, the Zeigarnik effect, and psychologists understand that. And it's in every drama series that you ever see on TV. they're always got you hanging on for the next
Yes,
episode, what happens
absolutely.
to her. And you can do that with articles. You can have a cliffhanger at the end of them. Another one that I use a lot is speak in the first person. Now, speak in the first person is usually singular. Speak in the first person plural. So instead of I, it's us. Speak in the second person, speak in the third person, and speak in the third person plural. So that's a very important one that can really give direction. And there's a company that I know that always wants to write in the third person. And I've worked on a tool that makes it do that because it
Hmm.
seemed to work better for advertising. Speak persuasively. That's another great one. And one I've used quite a bit, I've got a tool called Hypewriter, and that'll write stuff like late night TV ads. It really does the job. It's not necessarily what I'd use myself, but there were people that wanted it, so I actually built it based on that. And so I can say add subtle hype. Another thing that I've used quite a bit is add humour, add subtle humour, add extreme humour. And those can be very effective. And of course, because it's a prompt tag, it'll alter the whole output. It flavours the whole thing. And wordplay is another one I use. The and speak with urban lingo. Now, this is really interesting because I did this for my Australian friends. Use Aussie lingo, and it'll just use Aussie lingo.
Oh, very
Tag,
interesting.
use Kiwi lingo, which is from New Zealand, and use UK lingo, use US lingo. And then there's the other ones, which are the SEO ones, which add semantic entities. That blew me away because it does a great job. I couldn't believe. I used to just create a list and get it from these other tools, which we can actually get these entities from. But the LLM actually creates an incredible list of semantic entities. So I say create a list of semantic entities in some cases, and then I'll add it to an article. Just add semantic entities. I was taking them, just pasting them into phrase because it does a score. And the score, when I was just pasting them with add semantic entities, was actually 75 without touching one word. So it does a great job. And what we don't realise is what's hidden under the surface of these AIs. They've got all this information. It's all about tapping into that information so that we can get the benefits, like the Hemingway's rules. So add semantic entities was one. Make lists of, I've got, and so make lists of keywords, long tail keywords, synonyms, antonyms. So those actually are very quick ways of getting information that we can add into our content. For locations, I've got add location, add brand. So there's a heap of them that you can actually just, it's like you're actually pointing the AI into the right direction without having to do all of this extra stuff to say anything. It'll just do it automatically. And add target markets, so then you can put your demographics in. One tool I've got is called size search, and I did it. It was really interesting because we all know about the hallucination issue.
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and it took me ages to get it on track. But I said, unless it's got this scientific or historical or scientific basis, say this, and that stopped it doing it. It says, I don't know. And I actually got it to say, I don't know, instead of coming up with rubbish. So that was a great breakthrough. And size search it's like a Swiss Army knife. It's like getting a Google answer engine without all the clutter around it. And
Okay.
like with Google these days,
Oh,
they
yeah.
second ever since Bert, they've been second guessing what everyone's thinking. They won't unless you put the quotation marks around them, and then they take it seriously. It's funny how it works there too, isn't it? But it's important to get quick information. If I want to say, what are the benefits of bilberry? And it'll give me two paragraphs on it. And then I can keep on going, I say, and ask it extra questions. So it starts off a dialogue. And I've tested it with facts, things that have happened only yesterday, because I'm asking it to use Bing. If it uses Bing, if you force it to use Bing, you'll get up-to-date information. It's as simple as that. And site search is a really interesting one. And one of the reasons I first developed it was to create meta descriptions. And that's why I saw here, create meta descriptions. So it'll do a meta description based on, and it will do it the right length. And you don't have to tell it,
Wow.
Yeah, it'll do the whole thing. And make a rich snippet, which I've used, and they can get featured on Google. So it's a nice little tool for those extra SEO things. I've got a tool called SEO Easy. It started off as Semantic Author, and there are 2 GPTs I've got. The difference between Semantic Author and SEO Easy is Semantic Author acts like an expert. It's like you're talking with Bill Slasky, to be honest.
Okay.
And it'll explain everything it's doing. So it'll say, I'm doing this. And so it sort of basically trains someone how to become an SEO expert, because it's giving them all the information and it's its own help file. So it really is an incredible tool, Semantic. But a lot of my subscribers wanted, let's write it. Instead of explaining everything, let's write it. Semantic SEO Easy is just a cut-down version of Semantic Author. It streamlines the process. And so it's got all this, add the entities, it's got all these tags I've collected all over the years. And my templates are built out of these tags. That's why they work so well. And that's been a bit of an edge for me for at least 12 months. And because people say, how do you get to do that? Because I've been telling the AI and extracting it, like you've just found out recently, and it will improve your prompt engineering. What I'm interested in is, yes, it's been really good for me and I've really enjoyed it, but I think I'd rather see prompt engineering improve over the whole industry. And that's been my aim with this, with releasing it to a wider market. And I think it will improve everybody's prompt engineering and save them a heap of time and tokens.
I was going to say one of the neat things about this is that prompt tags allow us to save a ton of tokens, and therefore that means the API costs are lower for us to get the same type of results. It reminds me very much of months and months ago, I learned or discovered, I don't remember who I learned it from at the moment, but I think I learned it, that we could enter in a personality type, such as a Myers-Briggs personality type or things like that. And I, for example, am an ENFP. And so I could say, write in the style of an ENFP. And that's a pretty simple, easy command. But yet ChatGPT, understanding what that Myers-Briggs personality type is, has literally reams and reams of information on how I might sound, what tones I might have, the way I might word things. But I don't have to put any of that in. I don't have to burn any tokens on that. I literally can just go right in the style of an ENFP, and I've gotten virtually, if not all, the benefit while only spending just a few slim tokens to do that. And that's really, I think, where I see prompt tags is it's the next evolution of that in my mind. I'm sure it's far more, where I can, again, give specific instructions in just a few words, almost like code words, and know that ChatGPT is now going to take that and run with that with as though I maybe fed it 1,000 words. And that's just so incredibly valuable. Peter, two quick things. One, we always ask everybody, the name of our podcast is the 91 Day Success Podcast. And I did not prompt you for this, no pun intended. But I always love to ask guests, if you had to give advice to someone, and obviously in your business, obviously a lot of people getting into AI, but if you had to give advice to somebody, they had $1,000 that they wanted to start a new business with. They didn't have to worry about living expenses and that, but they just had $1,000 and they wanted to build a business in 3 months or 91 days. What type of advice might you give them, the things they should do and maybe what they should spend that $1,000 on in the first 91 days? I know I'm putting you on the spot. Any thoughts you might be able to share with our audience on that at all, Peter?
Yeah. The thing is, it's interesting because it was a complete shift for me, and it was a 91-day thing. It just took off. And I think the thing is that you've got to go with looking to be creative, and Sam Altman has made this very clear, that AI is really a creative, the real advances in creative tools and in creative writing. If you're looking to be an affiliate marketer, or you're looking to do articles that will get you noticed, getting tools that will actually do it for you and will actually speed up the process in that 91 days. It will speed up the process of you being able to output really high quality content. And that's what I've built my all-in-one authoring tools for. I had different writing ones and writing tools. And so that became an issue because there were too many. It's the old marketing maxim. If there's too many options, it makes it too difficult to comprehend. So I compiled them into an all-in-one tool. And there's actually 12 tools in there. And it writes, and you can write Hypewriter, you can use Conceptual Author. There's one called Scene Weaver, and that is extended in the GPT's Storyline Author. So it depends what you're wanting to do. There are tools that have been built, and you could just use Storyline Author if you wanted to do a book. You could use AI Professional if you want to do marketing material or affiliate marketing. These are all, it's finding the right tool to do the right job. Vanilla GPT is just going to give you vanilla GPT output. You need, and this is where custom GPTs have really shown the benefits of these custom templates. So to me, I think it's finding the right tool. One of the most important things is do something that you like. Don't try and be something that you're not. And that's vital.
Makes great sense and great advice across the board. Peter, if people are interested in connecting with you and understanding how they can connect and learn more about the different products you have, the services you do, things like that, what's the best way for them to reach out and connect with you, Peter?
I've got a website, authored.com. You'll have to edit that, but I've got a website, intelligence.com, and the Facebook group is the Authored Intelligence Mastermind. So you can find a lot of information in those two places particularly, and they've got current deals and give a good explanation, and there's lots of training videos and things that I've got in that place. So those would be the best places to go to find out more about the products that we offer.
Fantastic. We'll make sure we do that. And I want to encourage you, if you've been intrigued at all by the things that Peter's talked about today, obviously he's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to AI. And that's coming from somebody who spends a lot of time in it myself. Peter's taught me a lot and has a lot of great experience and shares some great stuff. Highly encourage you to connect with him, reach out, learn about the things that he's doing and determine if any of them make sense for you. But I think that Peter brings a lot of perspective, and with his experience working in the areas prior to even AI, as he mentioned with phrase and other things like that, I think there's just some tremendous experience. Peter, I want to thank you for joining us. We're going to put all your contact information down in the show notes, and we'll make sure that you're available, or all that's available to everybody. Any parting words you want to leave our audience with?
Yes, I think the words that how I'd put it is, actually, you probably have to edit this, but
No worries.
yeah, I think it's important to really catch hold of what AI can do for your business. I think that's what you're looking for. And as we discussed just before, look for something that you're interested in, find a tool that will do it the best for you, and then you'll get the best out of what AI can offer you.
Great advice. Great advice. Peter, thank you again for joining us all the way from halfway around the world in New Zealand. I'm grateful for you. Want to thank you for all your contributions in my Facebook group and all the sharing you've done. I really appreciate that perspective and that abundance mentality. And if you're listening on the podcast today, I want to thank you for listening in, for staying with us, and want to encourage you. We would love your feedback. If you like this as a type of style, we'd love to hear more from you. We'd love to hear about guests that you like, and we would welcome your suggestions. And of course, we cherish your 5-star reviews on the podcast as well. With that, everyone, make it a great day, and we will see you on the other side.